Great. Well, welcome to Junkin' It Up with Junk You podcast, where our goal is to educate and inspire current and future business owners with real life experience and examples. I'm Dylan. This is Steve. And today we have Annie Amoon Richard, owner and founder of Amoon's Custom Organizing, a professional organizing firm here in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Annie is a certified professional organizer, senior move manager, and hoarding specialist. And she was also personally featured on Annie's season 13, episode 8 show, Hoarders. So thanks for joining us today, Annie.
Good to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it. So I just wanted to start off with just asking kind of how did you get into organizing and what led you to starting your own firm, and just kind of give us your background on that.
Okay. I was born organized. I
Okay.
cannot help it.
Yeah.
I was not.
yeah, me either. I'm trying to get there still, yeah.
My mom said I used to sort my toys in the playpen.
No way. That's awesome.
You know, I'm the person at the grocery store that everybody thinks I work there because I'm the one, oh, that doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
And, you know, putting it where it belongs.
Right.
So I really can't help it. Thankfully, I was born that way. So every job I ever had was organizing. My very first paid job was in 5th grade. I had a teacher who was also the football coach at the high school. And this is in 5th grade, so I guess that's middle school. Yeah. And he paid me 30 cents a week.
Quite the salary.
To grade his papers.
Yeah.
I was an A student, so he would grade mine, give me the answer key, and I would grade all of my
That's awesome.
my peers' papers so that he didn't have to,
That's a good deal
after
for him.
coaching football, come
Yeah.
home and then grade papers. So, and he knew that I would, do it right because
Sure.
I was an A student. And that's just my personality was very methodical, attention to detail, organized.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my very first paid job, organizing. But every job I had after that was organizing in some way, shape, or form. I've done retail stores, and of course I was the one they loved because I would stock the shelves perfectly.
Yeah.
I would keep track of the details, make sure I dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then I was in management. I managed retail paint stores as the office manager. My business card actually said office manager in Queen because I took care of all the details
Yeah. Right.
of running a paint store. And most paint people they're really good at painting, but not so much at the
Organizing
the
and
business
administration.
details.
Yeah.
So every job I've done. And then 20 years ago, I'm actually finishing my 20th year in business.
Wow.
I
Congratulations.
started my own business so that I could be in control of my time and kind of call the shots, and kind of got tired of corporate America
And just did it on your own.
getting passed over for promotions.
Yeah.
And,
Right, yeah.
being the person that always did everything
But then doesn't get
and
you know,
doesn't get
maybe
the credit or
right.
the
reward,
promotions
yeah.
and the rewards. So
Yep.
I said, enough of this. I'm
Sure.
starting my own business.
So did you go full time right away 20 years ago?
No. I started part-time. At that point, I was actually teaching preschool.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I was the assistant director of a local preschool.
Very
Did the before and after school care, and then, was the assistant director handling all the organizing details.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So the director didn't have to. My director was actually my best friend, so that worked out really
that's
well.
good.
Yeah.
So that was how I kind of started the transition, and then eventually I went full-time organizing.
And when you went full time, was it just kind of like your side hustle got big enough to become your main hustle, or did you have a specific point in time where you wanted to make that decision to make the jump? Was there an event that happened that made you do that?
No, it was just, teaching preschool unfortunately doesn't pay. It's one of the most important jobs in the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's one of the lowest paid as well.
Yeah.
Childcare is very expensive, but the actual teacher in the classroom doesn't make
Very
much
yeah.
at
Got it.
all. So I knew I couldn't afford to do that as my sole, income.
Right.
So organizing was the path, since it was what I was born to do,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I need to make this work. So
Definitely.
thank God I made it work.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you kind of transitioned and started not solely, but doing, even bigger jobs like hoarding and not just, how did you get into that? Did you kind of stumble into and get a client, or did you know, okay, I think I can do this, or?
I kind of morphed into move management first. I worked with other starting out as an organizer, I knew how to organize, but I didn't necessarily how to run an organizing business. So I partnered with other organizers that would hire me as like a subcontractor to help them on moving jobs, basically. And that's how I kind of learned the move management piece of it. And that typically lends itself to being exposed to people who hoard.
Sure.
Yeah.
My mom is actually a low-level hoarder, and I didn't even know she was a hoarder until after I became a professional organizer and started learning more about hoarding, and I'm connecting the dots. I'm one of 7 children.
Wow.
We grew up in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, so it was crowded. I had no clue that any of it was really
she was
hoarding.
kids, it felt like.
Yeah, really, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then as we, all grew up and moved out, it was like, wait a minute. I started connecting the dots, and so it's a passion I have to help people that very few people are helping.
Right. Yeah. So it kind of, like
so
you said,
I transitioned into.
Yeah.
I got exposed to it in the realm of moving, because working with people who hoard is usually very crisis driven. Because it's very hidden, so people don't go, "Oh, I'm a hoarder,"
Right.
They don't talk about it. They keep it very private, and so it's usually only when there's a crisis that the problem comes to light, and then something needs to be done quickly.
So you say it's crisis-driven. Who typically is the whistleblower in terms of we need to get this fixed? Is it like a family member that they haven't seen in a while that opens the door and goes, "Oh my, we got a problem here," or is it a neighbor who doesn't see the person as much? Are there any typical people who realize that the crisis is happening and then reach out to you?
Typically, it's a family member. I do get a lot of calls from the Department of Aging. Usually, most often, it's either when they're moving. It's like, okay,
got it.
For whatever reason. Sometimes it's, somebody fell in the hoard, and now they broke a bone, and they're in the rehab facility, and they can't go home until the house is cleaned up and safe.
Yeah.
Those are the typical scenarios usually that cause, okay, we got to deal with this now. Family members are usually aware, and they've tried the things that seem logical to do, and then they get frustrated, throw up their hands and say, "Oh, we'll deal with it when mom dies or dad dies or whatever." But then a crisis hits, and it's like, okay, now we got to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I try to educate as many people as I can before it becomes a crisis.
Yeah,
when
definitely.
the issues come to light, because there's a lot more hoarders than people realize.
I was just going to say something that I became aware of as we got into our industry, being junk removal, is how many hoarders exist and where they exist. Because, you see the TV shows and it's like, oh, well, that's 1 in a million. Like, there's not a lot of people who are like that. And then we get called to do these jobs that are in neighborhoods that, $500,000 houses. It's a nice neighborhood. There's a playground around the corner. And then the random house, you just walk in. It's like, whoa. And then you see that a couple of times in these areas that you wouldn't expect. And you realize, wow, this has got to be a lot more prevalent than you'd think. So it's interesting. It's also interesting in terms of the family members knowing, because I personally don't know any hoarders, but to hear that a lot of people are aware of the situation, it's interesting. So with that in mind, in terms of hoarding as like a disease or some sort of disorder, is that something that you find like the person has some sort of attachment to these items, or is it do you find like you've seen an event that usually happened that caused the hoarding? Are they kind of built into that person? There's
a variety of issues that can kind of cause or activate hoarding behaviors. It's not a logical disease. It is considered a mental health issue. It's used to be lumped with OCD, and they're finding that there is a small percentage of people who hoard that also have OCD, but not every person who hoards has OCD.
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
So now it's its own separate diagnosis of hoarding disorder.
Gotcha.
And the criteria they use to diagnose it is typically it's compulsive acquisition. People can't help themselves. They have to get stuff.
Right.
And then there's a component of difficulty discarding. So they have to keep getting stuff, and they can't get rid of any of it. So, and then it meets critical mass, and then it starts causing issues with the relationships of the people in their home, because there's no room to do anything, and it also impacts the use of the rooms.
Sure.
So you can no longer cook on your stove because there's stuff piled on the stove, or you can't use your shower because there's stuff piled in the shower, or you can't open the doors because there's stuff piled in front of the doors. So it becomes you can't use the rooms for the purposes they were intended. It starts affecting your relationships, and those are the big criteria that they use. And then, of course, there's levels of hoarding too. There's different scales. There's a clutter image rating scale.
Okay.
That's a series of photographs for various rooms. And so someone can look at a picture and say, does this look like your living room, or does it look more like this? And it's various increasing stages of clutter. Because sometimes people with hoarding disorder have very low insight into them having. They're like, I don't have a problem. What's your problem?
Yeah.
And some of it's pride. They just don't want to admit they have a problem. And some of it is they clearly can't see that there's a problem.
Sure.
It's not a logical disease.
Yeah, and I would imagine that was interesting. You said the critical mass and the relationships, that when that happens, then the problem gets even worse because now they're not bringing anyone over, right? So now they want to hide it even more. And then if they get pleasure or comfort from getting more things, well, then that doubles down more. And now they're high, right? So it becomes aggressive and really compounds on itself, right? When you hit that point where it's really
their joy in life comes from getting more stuff.
Yeah.
And so to speak to your point, Steve, about finding it in neighborhoods you would never expect it, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic thing you're in. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It's about even from the studies they've done so far. It's very easy in our society to get stuff for free.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you don't even have to have money to become a hoarder.
Yeah.
Most people who hoard to a degree that it's a problem are very deep in debt. They'll spend, it's just like many addictions, in that they'll spend their last dime and even their rent money or their mortgage payment, their food money, to go to the Goodwill store or thrift store and buy something because it's a compulsion. They simply can't help it. So it's not, a lot of times people are labeled as lazy. Why don't you just clean the place up? They physically can't, mentally can't. It's more prevalent than you would think.
Right.
They estimate 2 to 5% of the population are hoarders on some level.
Sure.
In addition to the clutter rating scale, there's also another scale that has 5 levels based on the use of your home. Can you open all the doors? Can you use the rooms for their intended purposes? Do you have people over? Is it affecting your relationships? So there's different criteria with the different scales.
Sure.
But when you say you don't know anybody who hoards, I would bet if you
fair.
Do 2 to 5%.
Right.
If you know 100 people,
you know
5 hoarders. You just don't know that they're hoarders because you would never assume it or guess it from their appearance. A lot of times they're impeccably dressed. They could be perfectly organized and neat at work, so you would never have a clue. So a lot of times when the family members find out, it's a shock. And it's a surprise. Like, we had no idea. And they're very good at manipulating circumstances. So, like, if you have something that you're doing with them and, okay, I'll meet you at your house, I'll pick you up, they're ready and they're outside the door. So you don't have to ever come in. So a lot of it's hidden and you don't necessarily pick up on those cues that, I've never been in their house.
Yeah, right.
Because they're so used to covering because there's so much shame involved in it. So they're really good at manipulating circumstances so that you don't find out.
Yeah. It's interesting just to look at that because you said it's not a logical disease, but yet they still have some sort of subconscious awareness that they don't want people to see it. It's very interesting to look at it like that.
Right. And it's not logical in the sense that the typical things you would think to help them, like, we'll send mom away for a weekend and we'll clean up her house while she's gone. And they're like, and then mom's upset when she gets back and doesn't want to talk to them again. It can totally damage relationships. There's been suicides by people after forced cleanouts where you just took away their life, basically.
Yeah.
You just, stripped everything from them.
Yeah.
Going back to your earlier comment about the causes, usually there's some sort of traumatic event that happens in their life and that is beyond their control. Somebody dies suddenly, whether it's a spouse or a child. It could be a husband asks for a divorce and leaves. It could be they get into a car accident and now they can't do the work that they used to do, and they're confined at home, or their life changes in a major way. It could be a move.
Yep. Or a pandemic, and now you're stuck
literally
at
just
home
gonna
and
say,
you start online shopping.
It could
right?
be a whole host of things that seem random. And a lot of people point to the Depression and World War II and all that, and that there are a lot of hoarders that impacted, but not everybody that survived World War II and the Depression hoard.
Sure.
My mom did grow up in the Depression and in World War II, but we point to the thing that kind of triggered her hoarding behaviors as when she was 12. She came home from school one day, and her mom had given all her dolls and her paper dolls to the neighbor for their kids.
Yeah.
Totally she had no warning.
Yeah.
She come home, everything's gone, given to the neighbors. You're too old to play with it. Too bad, so sad. And it triggered something. And now my mom holds on to things, not because she necessarily cares about the thing, but it's because it's hers.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware that, okay, that's mom's. You have to make sure that you even if it's trash, is it okay if I throw this away? Because you have to respect the fact that it's hers, because she was so violated by that simple thing. And her mom probably didn't even think
of it.
It wasn't malicious. It just happened. She just
it was
said,
she doesn't need these anymore.
I'm giving them away. It's
exactly.
a good thing. Yeah, but right.
Doesn't realize, and her mom probably never realized it through, my grandmother's life.
Right.
As my mom grew up. The studies have indicated that a lot of times hoarding behavior starts in the teen years. But because you have a lot of checks and balances, your mom, you got to clean up your room.
Right.
Yes, you might have a roommate in college.
You can't put that in the garage, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Roommate.
Exactly. You have a roommate, you might have a spouse. And it's only in the later years when kind of all those checks go away. Maybe your spouse has passed away or you've gotten divorced, the kids have grown and moved out, and now you're by yourself, that the hoarding behaviors start become a problem.
Sure.
And then it's like, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
But if you kind of connect the dots of their history, what are the traumas that happened to them in their life? Those are the things that you can look to and say, that might have triggered something. And then, rather than focusing on the hoard, if you focus more on the person, like find out what their life story is, and not in an interrogating type of way, like tell me what your problem is.
Just conversational.
Just conversational, like whatever the relationship is, focus on that. Mom, I care about you. I want you to live your last years as your best years.
Right.
Kind of get them looking forward and finding out, what's your life story? What was it like for you when you were my age? Just kind of conversationally learn who they are.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you have tons of experience and you're certified, but if somebody thinks they have a friend or a family member that's, I would assume if someone's on the extreme level, they need to bring a professional in, obviously. But if they think someone's close, is there a way they can approach to try to get them to at least move in the right direction, and then when do they decide, okay, this is too much? I know that's a varying scale depending on the situation, but, how would they approach a friend or a family member?
Again, be conversational. Don't focus on the hoard. Focus on the person.
Yeah.
Again, it's a mental illness, so it's not necessarily something they can help. But you want to get them help. Yeah. So it's a matter of you can't, change somebody else. You can lead them to water. You can't make them drink.
Right.
But you can do things to make them thirsty.
Sure. That's
so it's, be conversational. Find out their life stories. What were their traumas? What are the connections to the things? Because most items that people keep, they keep for a reason.
Sure.
Oh, somebody bought this for me. Like my mom is now 88 years old, and she's like the last one standing. All her siblings are gone.
Right.
So that's what she has
my
to
dad's passed away. Most of her contemporary friends are now gone. There's a few handful left.
Right.
But so it's like, that's all I have of them.
Yeah.
And so that's what she's hanging on to, is the memories and the connections.
Sure.
So if you can kind of find out what the stories are behind the things and say, okay, let's showcase the items that mean the most to you. And let's find out what are the items that are less important.
Sure. Yeah, I was gonna ask. So it seems like when you have a hoarding situation, it's a battle on two fronts. There's dealing with the actual stuff that's there and get them to be livable, but then that's like the Band-Aid, and then there's the actual underlying issue of what's causing the hoard. So I don't know how much you venture into this end of things, but do you typically have part of your service be like the therapist without being the therapist, or do you recommend them to get the professional therapy to fix that underlying issue so it doesn't happen again?
Yes, typically you definitely want them to be in therapy for it once they recognize there's a problem.
Got it.
But there's a lot of people that have issues with too much stuff that may not be aware that they really have an issue. And if you go in with guns blazing like, oh, you need to be in therapy, you're not going to get very far.
For sure.
So again, you have to kind of be gentle and find, relate to them as person to person. Like, you're in this situation. What are your challenges? What do you want to change? Because a lot of times they're fine. So it's a matter of, okay, but it's not safe. If you can focus on the safety, we usually refer to it as what we call harm reduction. So you can't go in and expect them to go, okay, we're going to make it house beautiful in a matter of calling a junk hauler guy.
And look like a fixer-upper.
In a weekend now, you can be on Better Homes and Gardens magazine. It's not going to happen.
Yes.
But, you can start the baby steps of saying, okay, is this the way you want to live?
Sure.
Yeah.
And find out. Well, sometimes hoarders will dig in because if they sense that you're, giving them the finger of you gotta, you have to, you should, they're gonna push back.
Yeah.
Our brains are hardwired for war, for fighting.
Yes.
Yep.
So the minute you start trying to tell me that the way I'm doing things is wrong, I need to do something different, their defenses go up and you're going to get nowhere.
Especially if it's their identity, which is my stuff is my identity. So now you're challenging them as a person, not just, oh, your house is not clean. It's like where I go, oh, okay, you're right, I should pick that up. They go, no, that's me. This is my stuff. This is part of Dylan. And it's, that's a totally different thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to tread lightly. And I am not a professional counselor.
Sure.
Right.
I intuitively am a caring, empathetic, kind of compassionate person. So I tend to lean towards, okay, tell me your stories rather than, okay, let's get a box and clear it out. You kind of have to tread lightly. And sometimes family members aren't the best person to help them.
I can imagine.
Because there's too much history. There's too much
too
of them giving this. They're too...
The son's telling them, you got to fix this, Dad.
Right.
And he's, no, what do you know? I raised you.
And they're going to fight back. Because even if they planned on getting rid of an item, the minute you tell them you have to, you got to, you should, they're going to say, hell no, I'm going to keep it. Even if they had intended on getting rid of it. So you have to be very cautious and let them steer the bus. Because a big part of it is power and control. Because something that happened that triggered the hoarding behaviors is usually a loss of control. Something happened that was beyond their control. And so they're holding on with all their might to whatever control they feel they can grab. And the minute you start threatening that, you're going to get pushback and you're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
So it's not a logical disease. The things that you think logically would help, like, hey, let's just clean this out while mom's not home, aren't helpful. Throwing stuff away behind their back. Oh, they've got so much junk, they're not going to notice if I throw away this.
They will.
They will.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it'll damage the relationship. It'll erode the trust. And then guess what? You're not going to get anywhere.
That'll make it perpetuates the problem.
The second you bring it up, they go, no.
Yeah. So next time you come to help, it's like, no. I know what you did last time. You're not doing this again.
Exactly. And then they're afraid to go anywhere because you'll do it again.
Sure.
Right.
So then they stay home and they isolate themselves.
More stuff.
And more, it's just a downward spiral.
Sure. So a big part of your specialty is, as you made the analogy, is to help make them thirsty.
Right.
You're not necessarily trying to fix the problem. You're trying to help them figure out that they do and make them motivated to get help or fix the problem.
Exactly.
Got it.
And I'm just the facilitator.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'm called in when they have to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's typically what I specialize in, is because most of the time they're seniors. I'm a senior move manager.
Sure.
So they're moving. Okay, we've got all this stuff. How are we going to get it moved in the 2 months between now and settlement?
Sure.
What do we do? Where do we start? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the family members start. They try to do it themselves. They get in way over their head. They have a fight with mom, and then they're calling me saying, I can't do this. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And so then I go in and I meet with mom, and I say,
makes total sense.
I'm not here to throw your stuff away.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me whether you keep your stuff or don't keep your stuff. I'm simply here to make your life better and help you get from point A to point B. So that's what I shine in as far as, professional help, is I'm not coming in telling them what they have to do, because you won't get anywhere shooting all over people.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Of
course.
But I can say, okay, what are your goals?
Yeah.
Obviously it may not be your choice to move. They may not have a choice, depending on what the circumstances are that they're in.
Yeah.
But you can choose how you move, and you can choose what you move. So I try to give them as much power and control as I can in the situation that they're in. It's just like working with kids. Mm-hmm. There's some things they have a choice in, and other things they don't.
Yeah.
You have to eat breakfast today, but here's your choices.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing working with people who hoard. Is here's your power. And the more that you can encourage them and build them up, and not false, stroking their ego, but find the things you can emphasize.
Sure.
Because they've been so beat up by life, for whatever traumas they've been through and whatever situation they find themselves in, it's usually a negative reason why they're moving. So the more you can emphasize the positive, like, oh, you really do have a nice collection of coffee mugs or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, which ones are the most important to you? And then you kind of deal with reality. It's like the reality is your new kitchen is smaller than your old kitchen. So it's not a judgment call, me saying they have too much stuff. It's me saying the reality is, in this kitchen you have 12 cupboards. In this kitchen you have 3.
Right.
Yeah.
So the reality is,
just mathematically,
it doesn't make sense.
So I'm not judging them because they have too much. I'm simply saying, okay, we need to figure out what's going to fit in your new space so that you can be happy and safe living there.
Exactly.
So let's figure out which are your favorite coffee mugs to make sure go to your new house. Let's isolate them first, get them packed up, and ideal case is that they can get into their new place first.
Yeah.
And then deal with the rest of the stuff at their old place. Because the sooner they can make the mental switch from their old home now being their house and their new house being their home, the sooner it is to make that mental switch of let's get the best of the best to your new place first.
Yeah.
So you can see you have enough, and then what else needs to come.
Right.
And once they find and get used to the new home, the new house being their new home, then they can relax and realize I do have enough. I know where everything is. And now it's a lot easier for whoever else is involved to get rid of
makes total sense.
The other stuff. But if I come in with guns blazing and say, you got to get rid of 90% of your stuff, let's just call the junk guys in and get it gone.
Yeah.
You're not going to, it's going to, it's the new place is going to be hoarded at lightning speed.
Yeah.
Because you violated every sense of their person that you possibly could have in a already trying time. Yes. So you don't get anywhere.
Yeah,
it
this
just
might
makes
be
the problem worse.
A combination of all the things we've talked about, but is there a good way to get the person to accept the removal portion of things, or do you kind of have to guise it as like what is going to happen after the junk guys take it? Because I'm assuming that there's usually some sort of breaking point where they go, okay, like I am okay with getting rid of these things. You know what I mean? So how do you tread that area?
It's kind of working both ends towards the middle when you're starting on a project. It's like, okay, let's isolate the absolute favorite, best of the best things that you're moving to your new home, no matter what.
No one's touching this.
I call them family members.
Yeah.
They're your family members. They're moving with you.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. And then there's the low-hanging fruit where there's stuff that they go, oh, I know I can get rid of it. I just haven't had time to get it.
Box it up. Empty. Yeah, okay.
Then, so you work on those too. Because then they see momentum. They see spaces cleared, again, with their permission, with their okay. You got to get them in control of the process. Like, is it okay if we agree that things that are obvious trash, that I can bag that stuff up?
Sure.
And a lot of times I'll leave the bag open and I'll say,
whatever.
Because they get tired of me asking, can I throw this away? Can I throw this away? I throw? Let's come up with some criteria. If it's this, then I know I can do it.
Yeah.
And it's part of the building trust, because they're hypersensitive to the fact that I might throw something away behind their back because everybody else has done that to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like I have to be extremely careful, almost to the point of driving them crazy, that I am being respectful of your power and your control, and that you get to say what goes in the trash and what doesn't.
Sure.
And then as the trust is built, then they can say, oh, okay, if the magazine is more than 2 years old,
it's gone.
I can
make one decision
recycle
instead of
it.
hundreds.
Right.
Right.
And then it becomes easier for me to go faster too, because if you ever watch the Hoarders TV show, you can see that the first day is very tense.
Yes.
It's very slow, and the family members are like, oh, we're never going to get this done. Like, what's wrong with you people? And it's part of the process of building that trust, getting them to see that by them looking at every single item, it takes forever. But they have to feel that tension. They have to see that process being tedious and taking too long. And then you can say, okay, now let's come up with a criteria so that you can allow the people who care about you to help you.
Yeah.
You can trust them. Here's the list.
Interesting.
And you come up with a list. And then it becomes anybody can sort it.
Yeah, definitely.
And it can be isolated. And then you ask them, what are their charities of choice? Sometimes some people are like, oh, I want everything that possibly can go to the SPCA to go to the SPCA because I love animals.
Right.
Okay, you respect that. You put aside anything that could go there. Whether it actually ends up there eventually, sometimes it can, sometimes it can't.
Right.
Based on their criteria,
Of course.
it's on their how much they can afford, the process of the junk removal companies.
But they trust you're doing your best to facilitate. Hey, here's my goal. I know. Hopefully, it's 100%.
Right.
But if not, it is.
But it's again respecting their views, their wants.
Yeah.
It's like, tell me what's important to you, because then it helps me help them.
Definitely.
If I just go in the way I think it should be done,
right,
you're going to steamroll people, and you're going to get pushback, and you're not going to get anywhere.
Definitely.
So it's not about me. And I tell people that it doesn't matter to me whether you take every single coffee cup you own to your new house or not, because I don't have to live there.
Sure.
Yeah.
If that's what's important to you, fine.
Important.
Yeah. And it's like any good relationship. If the first date you propose, it's going to be tough to really get that done, right? You've got to, we have the same interest? It's like, you got to build it up, and then it's a lot easier to do those bigger things. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing.
And the more you get to know them as you work through the process of going through their stuff, you learn what's important to them. You hear their stories. You know what their life experience was that means something to you. So then, 2 days later, when you're finding a whole stack of magazine articles based on the work that they used to do, and you go, oh, now I understand why she's keeping all these really old newsletters from a company.
Right.
It's because she might be in them.
Yes.
Sure.
Maybe her son is in it. Maybe her spouse that's passed away is in them.
We're just saying it reminds them of those times that they have a good affinity.
And you don't know why it's important to them.
Yes.
But it might be incredibly important to them.
Yeah.
And it's an illogical disease, but that's their logic behind it. So once you understand it, it starts to make more sense. Oh,
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, right.
That's why.
Yes. And then because it's counterintuitive, like you said on the first day of the show, Hoarders, it's like, we should get in. Let's get going. Come on, we need to get going. No, that's the opposite.
Right.
The last day is going to be our fastest day.
Exactly.
This is going to be our slowest day, and we have to build up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
Exactly. Because then you built the trust. They understand the process. They've felt like they've had control. They learn to like you and trust you.
Yep.
And now you can take the ball and run with it. But if you try to grab the football out of their hand and run with it on the first date,
it's going to be tough.
They're going to be trying to get their football back and
right
slam
away.
the door
and
in
they
your
don't
face.
Want you.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's more not what you say, but how you say it.
Yeah.
It's not what you do, but how you do it. So there's a lot of things that people think is logical to do, which are the absolute wrong things to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So I try to educate the family members and go, look, this isn't about mom trying to keep everything. It's like, understand what, because a lot of times the adult kids have no idea what the early life of their parents were.
Right.
Or they might have an inkling, but they've never really connected the dots because they haven't had enough life experience yet to realize, like, oh, that's why mom is the way she is, because of all this that happened to her before they were born. And so if you can get them to kind of maybe talk to the grandparents, say, do you have a clue? Because a lot of times it's hereditary.
Sure.
You start looking at your family tree and there's hoarders all over it. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Like looking back at my family tree, I have a couple of aunts that for sure were hoarders.
Yeah.
That I had no clue when I was a kid going to their house. My family comes from a line of big families.
Yep.
So my aunt had 5 kids. My other uncle had 4 boys. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you went to their house, you had no clue that was hoarding was the issue. It was there's a lot of people in a small space, and things happen, stuff happens, and that's just the way life is.
Right.
So when you connect the dots and start seeing what are the family traumas that got passed down. What are the behaviors? Because we learn how to live life by the life we grew up in.
Of course. Yeah.
And so then it's hard to unlearn, the habits of your family, the beliefs even, like the beliefs through the Depression. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without.
Yeah. Right.
I heard that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, it's still usable. Why should I get rid of it? It's like, well, you're not going to use it. There could be somebody that uses it today. We're sitting here in your attic, it's deteriorating, and then nobody gets to use it. So, sometimes just pointing out the reality, not as a judgment, can kind of help them see, oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just because it's still useful doesn't mean you have to be the keeper of it.
Definitely.
It can be useful to somebody today if you let go of it.
Yes.
And then sometimes just pointing out the obvious, they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can make it get gone today and somebody can be using it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and you make it sound pretty easy, but it's not that easy in practice.
No, it's not.
I can imagine.
What would your advice be for someone who thinks, maybe they're listening to this and go, wow, I think I could, I have that type of skill set that I could do that, and they maybe wanted to be a, professional organizer and become a hoarding specialist? What would your advice be to that person that wants to get started or thinks they could do it? You know what I mean?
Well, I'd say contact me first.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
But there's a bunch of organizations. There's the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals, known as NAPO.
Yep.
And their website is www.napo.net. Then there's also the Institute of Challenging Disorganization, also known as ICD. And they're challengingdisorganization.org.
Yep.
And there's a lot of resources there. If you wanted... the path to becoming a professional organizer is more thorough than it used to be when I started. When I started 20 years ago in 2003, all you had to do was, I'm an organizer.
Yeah.
You had a website, you printed business cards. Yeah. That was all that needed to be done. Now they have a certification process where you have to, and I don't know if the criteria has changed since I became a certified professional organizer.
Sure.
And I did that in 2011. So it might have changed a little. But at that time, you had to have 1,500 hours of paid organizing work.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then you had to sit for an exam that was based on an extensive reading list of various organizing books. So you had to have a little bit of knowledge about... Because organizing is a very wide field.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it gets wider all the time. Because now there's like digital organizing, like all of your emails.
That's interesting.
And, your social media stuff.
Or financial records maybe. Which
right.
Is,
Everything's saved in the cloud now. So how do you pass that on to your heirs? How do you let your family know about it so that when you pass suddenly or otherwise, they have access to it? There's all kinds of, organizing is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be, a good place to start is at NAPO. We have a very robust local chapter in the greater Philadelphia, and that's NAPO-GPC for Greater Philadelphia chapter.
It's a great
.org.
chapter. Yeah.
So just learn what you can. There's a lot of information out there. The TV shows are good to watch as well. A lot of people can be negative about the TV shows because they're like, oh, they exploit these people and blah, blah, blah. And they don't, but when you've actually been on the set and you've seen the process, they're taking 4 to 5 very intense long days and boiling it down to a 2-hour show.
Yes. And making it watchable.
Yeah. So, they tend to highlight the worst of the worst on the show because that's what sells, basically.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
we're looking at train wrecks, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of healing that happens. There is always a therapist on site that works with the family before the show even starts. The work crew, which I was part of, we come in weeks in.
Yeah.
They've met with the family. They've talked to the family. They've counseled the family. They've done the planning. And then we show up and do the work.
And the reality is, this is a tough situation, show or not.
Oh,
and if it's not getting fixed, then it's not getting fixed. So the fact that the show is providing people to come in and actually at least try to do something is, like you said, we like to look at the train wreck portion, but it is, you look at the totality of it. At least something happened. It'd be a lot easier to say, oh, well, don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let them sit.
I was going to ask, with the show experience, how much of it is just business and how much do they actually help? You know what I mean? Like if they interfere more so with the cameras there, or if it's just kind of like a extraneous thing that just happens to be there while you're doing your process.
Right. Yeah. From my experience, I've done 2 episodes. One was 6 years ago, and one was just last October of 21. It aired December 6th of 2021.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
We'll attach the link for people to see.
Yeah, definitely.
And you don't see me till about a half hour in.
Yeah.
And, we're wearing masks. So it's not like I was the star by any means. I was just a worker bee behind the scenes. But I was definitely there.
Yeah.
You hear my voice helping the lady sort some jewelry. But very little of it is staged. And the staged parts that I saw were part of the process anyway.
Yeah, they just wanted to highlight them.
For instance, there might be a shelf full of items. Like on the episode I did, the lady was very concerned about her dad, and she was very close to her dad, and items that were important to her that belonged to her dad were just kind of randomly scattered in the hoard. And we were able to find those, and we created like not a shrine, but like a dedicated place that she could honor her dad.
Yeah.
So we put those items there, and so they made a highlight of that.
Of course, yeah.
So the process was gathering them.
Yeah.
You don't see necessarily that part, but you see
the
it.
End product.
You see the end result.
Got it.
Right.
So very little of it was staged for show's sake.
Yeah.
It was part of the process anyway. They just kind of highlighted that.
We're going to do a couple focusing points on this that maybe wouldn't be that much of a focus if we were just doing everything. But it is real that happened.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
So it is reality.
Yes.
It's just a little bit staged to pull out the parts that are relevant to trying to tell this big story in a short amount of time.
Yeah, no, that's a good insight because with most reality TV show, whether it be, Jersey Shore or Hoarders, you wonder how much is real and how much is staged. So it's cool to hear that it's pretty legitimate.
And the show pays for a lot of things. Like on this episode we did in San Antonio, Texas, there was no place for us to set up our tents to start sorting through the stuff that was going to come out of the house. So the show paid for the stump grinder guy to come in and clear the stumps out of the front yard so that we had space to set up.
Wow.
She had no working plumbing. They paid for the plumbers to be there for at least 2 full days to restore her plumbing.
Yeah.
They bought her a brand new refrigerator. They bought her a bed. They bought her all the bed linens and curtains and
that's awesome.
Throw pillows and
that's a lot.
Kitchen stuff. And they pay for a lot of stuff that you don't see. They pay for the psychologist to be there for weeks interviewing the family. So they're dealing with the family issues that most families honestly don't deal with.
Yeah.
It's like you show
Everyone
up at
has
Christmas.
the issues, yeah.
You show up on the holidays, you kind of dance around them, and you go home.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And everybody talks about everybody behind their back, you know.
Oh, that's not just me? Oh, okay.
But they come in and they'll sit the family down and go, okay, air your grievances.
Yeah.
You know, air your grievances. Let's connect the dots.
Yeah,
This
figure
is
this
why
out.
mom is doing this. You know, did you understand that because this happened to her in her young adult life, now this is why she does this? And then they can get some insight and they can start the healing. Like, yeah, it sucks that whatever happened to mom, but you don't understand. I had to grow up in this hoard.
Yeah,
And so if you watch the show, they always give space to the family to air their grievances, because that's part of the process of healing. Is you need to understand that what you did, regardless of why you did it or how you did it, it affected me in a negative way.
Right.
And you need to know that.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so mad at you. And that's why I don't come around. And that's why, you know, our relationship is damaged, is because you always put the hoard before me. And it's not that they really feel that way. It's just they can't help it. So it seems to the kid that, you know, I was less important than mom's stuff. But that's not really the case.
Yeah.
It's just that's the way they're...
It's not materialized.
Yeah. That's how their addiction is not the correct word. It's a type of addiction, but most addictions are based on finding pleasure, like doing something to feel
The
good.
reward pathway.
Whereas hoarding behaviors are typically to avoid pain.
Yeah.
Rather than seek
Interesting.
They don't want
pleasure.
the pain of
That's a
losing
good
it.
designation.
So it's kind of the same but different, or
Yeah.
different
Well,
side of the same coin, maybe.
Yeah.
And while the show is quote unquote forcing that so that, you know, we get the views of it, like a lot of situations, I'm sure that doesn't even happen. Like you get through you get the hoarder stuff out, but that never really happens. So while the show is having that occur and that can be tense, like you said, you're actually getting to the root of problems that in the long term is better. You know, it makes for good TV in the moment, but it's also actually good for the family.
Exactly.
Moving forward.
And they provide aftercare too. So they line them up with professional organizers for after the show.
Yeah.
They line them up with therapy sessions.
That's awesome.
They don't always take advantage of it.
Yeah,
but they offer it and they pay for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the whole family kind of has to be on board, or else the show doesn't really interact with them, because it is a family issue, and things do get passed on.
Yep.
You know, so it helps to.
And
I
bring
think it
awareness.
does way more help than it does harm.
Yeah.
But not everybody's ready to get help either, and
Exactly.
even though I've been in this for 20 years, I can't help everybody.
Sure.
Right.
They have to be ready for change and ready for help, and there's different stages of change. Not everybody's ready to go from, I'm going to ignore the problem to, okay, bringing the junk haulers.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
it's like
yeah.
it's a process, and it takes time, and you have to be committed to doing it.
Definitely.
You know, and a lot of times, as you see, it's crisis driven. It's
Sure.
like you're coming into a bad situation and they're like, okay, I don't want my stuff to be taken away, but it has to be taken away. So just do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you know,
Yeah. And it's tough.
it is
So,
tough.
Yeah.
So the more you can prepare people ahead of time and say, hey, I know this is tough, but, you know, it's going to be better in the long run, and get them looking forward rather than back.
Yeah.
Is a big step forward, and again, giving them as much control of a bad situation as you can.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I know like other addictions have some communities like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff, and I know there's some for hoarding, but I do think the show, kind of like Intervention, it gives maybe people an awareness of, okay, it's hard for, like, all those episodes are tough for everybody involved. So it's not just you're not just the worst case scenario. This is everybody that's been involved in this. It's tough. So I think it's good awareness in that aspect too,
It
right?
totally is.
Yeah.
And there's people that'll watch the show and say, okay, I'm not that bad, so therefore I don't have a problem. Or there's other people that watch the show and go, oh, I'm going to go clean up my closet.
Yeah.
It motivates them to
Sure.
go, okay, I'm going to do something about it before it gets this bad.
For sure.
So there's good and bad. Sometimes it's awareness.
Yeah.
Even for the adult kids, I'll say, go watch an episode so you can kind of get some insight. What are the words that the counselors are using? What are the words that the organizing are using?
What words aren't they using?
Right.
Too? Yeah.
Like, don't use the D word of dumpster.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah.
because you think a dumpster is the answer to the problem, it's not.
Yeah.
It might treat the symptom,
But you're
and
not
it might
fixing-
clear the space, but it's not helping the problem. It's making the problem worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, a dumpster may be needed.
But
usually it is.
Yeah.
But you don't have to say that in your first conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's going to, put up the defenses, and you're never going to be able to get the dumpster in the driveway.
Yeah.
For sure. Let them figure out that they need a dumpster.
Yeah.
One of the examples I use with my mom, I was helping her clear out her attic. Her county was doing a thing to help seniors get their homes energy efficient.
Oh, cool.
So her attic is uninsulated. So we were like, oh, they're going to pay for you to get your attic insulated? We're all for it. So the guy came, and of course he couldn't see because the place is packed. Because my mom had 7 kids. So anything that was breakable or valuable, she threw up into the attic so that we wouldn't break it. And we have no idea what's up in this attic.
Sure.
But that's where she squirreled away her hoard, basically. And so we were trying to get through it because they said, well, if you can clear it, we'll come back and we'll look. And so I started the process. Now, she lives in New York, so it's not exactly close for me to come from Pennsylvania to go up every weekend or spend large chunks of time helping her. But I was working on it, and it's not insulated. So you can't work in the winter because it's too cold. You can't work in the summer because it's too hot. So there's a very small window of time to do it. We were chipping away at the attic, and I've found this true of every single hoarded situation I'm in. They always save lots of bags, lots of boxes, any kind of storage containers.
Got it.
Right? So this attic has a whole bunch of boxes and a lot of bags. And I knew that if I just started throwing them away willy-nilly, that she would get upset, the trust would be eroded, and end of story. So I got the biggest box I could find, and I started putting all the bags in there. It was filled in 10 minutes. So and it was in our way. It was clearly, there wasn't a lot of room to work up there because it was full. And so she figured out, I guess I have too many bags. Okay, light bulb goes off. She could visually see, this is in our way. It's impeding progress. I didn't know I had this many.
But you had to lay that out for her.
I had to lay that out. I didn't say a word. All I did was I respected the fact that they're her bags, her boxes, whatever. Let's put them all together. So she can see what she has. And she was able to say, I guess I have too many bags. And I said, well, you already have a collection downstairs that you use day to day, or the more recent ones. I said, these have been up here in the attic for 20 years. And here's a bag from Caldors that hasn't been open in 30 years. And the plastic is deteriorating and it's crumbling into dust. It's like, so can we get rid of this box and recycle what we can recycle? Oh, yeah. And then that box was down the stairs
But if you had come in guns blazing, she just...
So then she feels good that, I made a good decision. I reinforced that good decision. The box got out of the attic. The bags got out of the house. Everybody won. But if I had gone in there, like you said, and just thrown away, Mom, you don't need these many bags. Let's just get rid of them. It would have shut down the whole process.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
So... you got to have to, so it's not necessarily what you do, but how you do it. That is the key to making real progress that's going to
help.
Have a change.
Right.
But it's slow going. It's tedious and it takes time and it's extremely frustrating for the family members.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Well, do you have any questions for us or any other thoughts that you could think of?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, if people want to find you, should they go to your website, call you? What's the best way to contact?
Either or both. My website is www.unstufficated.com.
We'll put a link in the description.
We'll have a link, so people can find it.
And my phone number is 484-250-9921.
And what areas do you service again, just for anyone?
I'm in Westchester, but I go an hour in any direction.
Okay.
Cool.
So Chester County, Delaware County, even northern Delaware. I've gone as far as Newark, Delaware. Out towards Berks County.
Sure.
Kind of an hour
most
radius.
Most of southeastern Pennsylvania.
Most of southeastern Pennsylvania and northern Delaware.
Just give me a call and see.
New Jersey. I try to avoid going to the city if I can. Just because parking's a challenge. And trying to get rid of donations. in the city can be a challenge if you can't park close to the building.
Yep.
Which you can't. No.
Yeah, exactly. So I try to, and there's plenty other professional organizers that I know through our NAPO chapter that work in the city and know the resources there. Sure. So I kind of try to stay in my lane.
Yep. Awesome. Well, which is great. So if anybody interested calls you, even if you say, oh, I can't necessarily help you, I can give you, another organizer that I know does a great job and is going to provide you.
And I'm networked with organizers all over the country through the national organization. Yep. So if you have a family member that may not even live in Pennsylvania, maybe they're out in Arizona or Florida, and I don't mind traveling. I love to travel. But, I'm networked with the other organizers too. So I can there's on the napo.net website, you can type in a zip code and it'll come up with organizers in that area.
Cool.
And chances are I know at least one or two of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or know of them.
Yeah.
And then,
awesome.
whatever. But, and if you just, usually at the holidays is when people find out that there might be an issue.
Yeah.
Because, I didn't realize mom's memory was going.
Yeah.
Or dad seems to be falling a lot. This is the time where adult children kind of get more of a insight that there might be the start of issues or issues have gotten worse. So I'm more than happy to answer questions. Email's probably the best for a back and forth dialogue. Yep. And my email address is unstufficated@gmail.com. I try to keep it simple. But educate yourself on what the issues are. Try to get the parents talking about their life history, get them thinking forward. Like their idea of going to a nursing home isn't what nursing homes are today.
Yeah.
Back in their day when they were putting their parents in the nursing homes, they were nightmares.
Yeah.
Right.
Now they're like resorts. So it's kind of like they don't realize that. So they're thinking, I'm not going to no nursing home because their experience with their grandparents or their parents are negative. So you kind of have to go, let's go look at a few.
Yeah, sure.
Things have changed. There's a lot more people aging. Now is the time to be an older person in America because things are getting better where they used to be horrible.
Sure.
Yeah.
So just educating yourself before you try to, change your parents is sometimes wise indeed because you might learn one little nugget of something either I've said today or something you found at the resources I point you to that you go, okay, now I know why that didn't work.
For sure.
Let me try it this way and then I might get farther.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you. And until next time on Junking It Up, have a good one.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Yep.